What a marvellous voice you've got. It's wonderful. I love that sexy voice. Yes. I did Lauren Bacall. I've been in love with that voice.
I saw her last night, actually.
Did you?
Yes.
Is she here in town?
Yes, she's doing a film with Paul Schrader.
Do you have sort of low voice things with her?
We used to have a bit of a game where when I was first working on Broadway and hanging out at the theatre places, and we would run into each other, and I'd say, "Good evening, Miss Bacall." She'd say, "Good evening, Miss Turner." And I'd say, "How are you, Miss Bacall?" She'd say, "I'm very well, Miss Turner." We just see who could go the lowest.
Two great voices. Now, let's talk a little bit about playing Martha in the West End. Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Yeah. I mean, a great part, isn't it?
It's a brilliant part for a woman. It's really one of the most extraordinary. She's... You know, I was attracted to it years and years ago when I was in university. I read the play, so about 30 years ago, yeah? And said, when I'm 50, I want to do this woman, this character. So when I was 49, I started sort of, you know, sneaking up on the producers and Mr. Albee and trying to plant the suggestion in their minds that I would be a great one to do it again. And finally, just before I turned 50, I got it. They asked me to do it.
This is set in 1962, isn't it? This play?
It's set in 62, and she's a woman of great ambition and energy and intelligence, and her father is the president of the college. And that's really what she wants and probably should be, but in 1962, it was not possible for a woman to hold that position. So she put all her ambition and her hopes into her marriage, her husband, George, who didn't share any of this, you know, he's quite content to just be an associate professor, and drives her wild, you know. Anyway, so I think that the tragedy is how her life was wasted in so many ways.
Your career, of course, had a meteoric sort of rise to it, didn't it, when you first started? I mean,
it took off pretty quick, yeah.
Pretty quick. I mean, you did Body Heat, and all of a sudden you were...
That was my first film.
First movie.
That was my first time on film,
yes.
Actually. And I think I had absolutely no idea, you know, what the impact would be. And in fact, I had these terrible nightmares that, you know, we'd be filming and I'd cast Bill Hurt a smoldering look and the audience would crack up, you know. I had these terrible dreams and they'd just think I was absurd. But it didn't work out that way.
And then, of course, I mean, Romancing the Stone, I mean, that, again, showed your sense of humour. I mean, that was a lovely...
I think it's a good-feeling film. I mean, I have to confess that sometimes when I'm feeling pretty low, I might watch a couple of minutes of it myself.
That's me reminded, actually, because this was the start of a very, very productive association with Michael Douglas.
And Danny DeVito.
And Danny DeVito,
It's always
too,
been
of
the
course.
three of us,
That's
yeah.
right, exactly. Let's have a look here. A nice scene between you and Mr. Douglas.
Would you please do me the courtesy of looking at me when I'm speaking to you? I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, if you had any kind of manners, if you...
I mentioned in my introduction that illness changed your life radically,
yes.
But well, which came first? I mean, reaching 40 and being regarded by Hollywood as being too old, or was it a conjunction between reaching 40 and being ill? I mean, what was the sequence?
I think it was a conjunction in that rheumatoid arthritis is what I was diagnosed as having when I was about 38, and it's usually late 30s, early 40s that women very often get rheumatoid arthritis.
How did it start? I mean, what were the first things that you noticed?
I was shooting, what's the one? Serial Mom. Huh?
Oh, yeah,
yeah. And it starts usually in the smaller joints, in toes and hands and things. And I couldn't get into the shoes at all. And of course, at that time, we couldn't, it was very funny, we couldn't afford to keep buying shoes. So I had to squash my feet into them. And anyway, when the film was over, I went to see some doctors in New York, and where I live. And I went to the specialist, a podiatrist at one of the big hospitals, and he told me that I was probably just being vain and needed to buy bigger shoes. Thank you. Then I couldn't move my elbow, and I still haven't got that back. And I went to one of these doctors that does all the pictures, you know, the specialty for the American baseball and everything.
Yes.
And he took a an MRI and couldn't see much wrong and said, well, perhaps we should just do exploratory surgery. And I said, I'm sorry? Then I couldn't turn my head. And my neck was... And so I finally just went to my GP, you know, my general practitioner, and said, I think I'm dying, you know, because I was feeling so ill all the time, and there's so much pain. And he finally took a blood test and said, well, your rheumatoid factor is insane. So then we start the endless rules of the medications. Now, at this point, this many years ago, they were still using the medications that they'd been using since the turn of the century, essentially. Terribly destructive, terribly difficult drugs that made you feel... Oh, it was a fight between which would kill you first, you know, the disease or the drugs.
But at that time, of course, I mean, there you are, you change your appearance. You're no longer that woman who walked into the room and turned every head. So Hollywood, in Hollywood terms, I mean, you were finished, weren't you?
Well, in some ways, and the thing was that there was all this talk about, you know, that I had all kinds of addiction problems or something, and frankly, I thought, well, not then, really, because I was on all this medication. But I thought it better to let people think that than to let them know how ill I was, because they hire, it seems to me, they hire drunks and drug addicts all the time, but they're very afraid by what they don't know. And I wanted to keep doing whatever work I could.
So you kept it quiet?
I kept it quiet,
yeah. But nonetheless, it did have this effect on your career inevitably. I mean,
It did, but frankly, you know, I actually believe that things work out for the best, and whatever path you have to take that's clear is the right one. And so this brought me back more strongly than ever to theater and to doing the kind of work that I'm doing now, which I think is some of the best of my life. What effects does it have with you now, the illness? You have to live with it, no doubt. Yeah.
You don't cure it.
I've had a few joints replaced. You don't want to go through the airport with me. I set off every alarm. You know, I'm turning in this Titania woman. Anyway, so that's a bit of a pain. Operations to cut out joints and to try and limit the stress to some of the joints.
And when you're doing a play, I mean, like you're doing now, which is, I mean, it's physically a very, very tiring, demanding play, I would think. So again, what effect does this have on you? Do you have to pace yourself very carefully? Or what?
I do. It's kind of like being, I don't know, an Olympic athlete in training. Everything you do, how much sleep you get, how much you talk, how much you eat, when do you rest, how much you work out, everything goes toward being able to do the show that night. And yeah, it's incredible discipline. People who say, you know, well, come on, you must get out and have some fun. You say, no, not really. I have my fun on stage.
Well, what about what view has it given you of that town, which actually nurtured you to start with, invented you, or discovered you rather than invented you? I mean, what view do you have of it now?
Well, it's very disappointing to think that, as I say, I think I'm doing some of the best work of my life.
Yes.
And all of that is 30 years experience and work. But to have it be less important, to have it disregarded, you know, the accumulation of the experience and the skill, to make that less important than your age, or, I mean, how can a 22-year-old possibly know what I know? And isn't it important that I have gained this experience? I find that it's disappointing in my country, in the United States, that we have that attitude.
It's also, too, I mean, it's that assumption, isn't it, which any man will tell you is wrong, that women of a certain age can't be sexy.
Oh, I think that's rubbish. I disprove that continually.
You do? Well, you and Susan Sarandon and people like that, I mean...
she's wonderful.
All right, now you're in a limited period of time in
we're going to be here now. We've got about 4.5 weeks left.
At the Apollo Theatre.
Yeah, we're closed. Our last show is May 13th, so you've got to get in before then, yeah?
You had wonderful reviews for it.
We had wonderful reviews. I understand it's most unusual for the British critics to all agree. They was rather shocked at themselves.
And also, too, I did read that, in fact, you were thinking of relocating, that you might come to live in Europe?
My life is changing a lot right now. My daughter is 18, and she'll be going to university next year. So, you know, that part of my life is the child rearing part is coming to an end, pretty much, you know. I mean, I know it never really ends, but, you know. The daily thing, and so I want my life to get bigger, not smaller. So I want to come back and have a base in Europe where I spend a lot of time and work more here.
You feel happy here, don't you?
I feel very happy here. I really do. I don't know, I think you know, New York City is as close to Europe as I can get. So that's pretty good, but I'd like to be here too.
I think they're two great cultural centres for theatre, particularly, New York and London. I mean, they're the two, aren't they? The two that matter.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of the climate in Italy too, baby.
Oh, yeah. That'd be good. Kathleen Turner, thank you very much indeed. Kathleen Turner.